All right, it's that time, everybody. We're joined by our buddy, Mr. David Harsanyi. He is at National Review, and he has thoughts on many of the things. He is down in the general swamp area of D.C. Mr. Harsanyi, what's up?
Not much. How's it going for you, Buck?
I mean, the lockdowns continue, and I'm waiting for someone to explain how we're not just going to be in one perpetual lockdown, given the newest trend seems to be we're going to put all these metrics in place. We're never really going to reach them, but we're going to keep talking about how we're getting close to them. And then if we have a day where we're not reaching them, we're going to go back to shutting down again, as if that's not going to just collapse anyone's confidence in a recovery or in the economy. So I'm starting to get pretty frustrated with the scene. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I see a lot of people making the argument online that, any kind of, if anyone's life is in danger, because we restart the economy, even to whatever extent, that immediately essentially makes you a murderer, and that we can't, we're so risk averse now that we can't put anyone's life at danger because of a virus. And that's just not the standard we use for basically anything we do in the world, from the things we eat to driving to just being alive. So I don't know how that. I think I do know how that debate's going to shake out. When the American people feel like it's time to be out, they're probably just going to emerge. And I'm not sure that the government will be able to stop them. Certainly not.
People don't like whenever I bring this up, those who disagree with me on the lockdowns. But, you brought up driving cars. I mean, I cooked myself an absolutely beautiful ribeye steak last night, perfectly seared, perfectly cooked. And there is always the possibility that in ingesting that, I could get E. coli and I could die. Right? It's small. I don't worry about it, but I like my steaks a little bit rare. Risk is a part of life. And I'm sensing there are a lot of politicians now who are taking the truly preposterous position that if only we listen to them, the risk will be gone. And I see this as a little bit of a play on the perfect security promise after 9/11, just give away like civil liberties and authority. But this is actually much worse, right? We kind of knew that we could defeat a human enemy. With this, though, it feels like this is going to be around forever. And you had Scott Gottlieb in this interview, which I cited earlier in the show, David, and he's saying, well, the virus looks like we're going to have continuous spread even with the lockdowns. Okay, well, what does that mean?
Right. Well, if we reemerge, the virus is still going to be here, right? So people are still going to get it. We can't continue to have lockdowns every time that happens. I mean, maybe you can have lockdowns for certain parts of the population, but it seems clear to me, and I'm not a scientist, granted, that, at some point we're going to have to let the virus play out. That's what flattening the curve was about. Now they want to just decimate the curve or destroy the curve. It's just not what the initial argument was, and it's not realistic unless we completely decimate the economy, which hurts people in other ways. I mean, it puts lives in danger in other ways, in our mental health, our physical health. I just don't, and I also just don't understand why people demand that Florida act the same way New York act, or Oklahoma act the same way, New York act. It doesn't make any sense. One size fits all policy, and this just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Speaking of David Harsanyi of a National Review, David, I want to switch gears with you and get to some of the other political stories out there. And anything, I mean, people were almost reporting on murder hornets with glee just because I think they knew that the murder hornets weren't COVID-19 and we could all look at something that was, that was the new shiny object, their scary mandibles and the ripping off of the bee heads that they do and all this stuff. But any political story right now feels like a bit of a respite. Even stories that under normal circumstances would be full of, a lot of acrimony and people really going after each other. The stuff on Biden and the Biden papers, you've written on this. I just want to know before I ask what your take is on whether we should get access to this stuff. I remember during the Kavanaugh hearing that we were told, and I watched as much of that hearing as I could stomach. I mean, it was hours and hours of it over the many days. And we were told that if you didn't have a release of literally millions of pages of documents from the Bush administration about Kavanaugh, that this was rushed through and we weren't getting the full picture. But Joe Biden's going like, whoa, I can't release the stuff in the Delaware University archive because there could be some bad stuff in there. What?
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on this. The first thought is that you're completely right. They were, before there was Blasey Ford or anything like that, they complained that they needed to see every shred of paper that Kavanaugh, in any sort of, from the 90s, anything Kavanaugh ever did with the Bush administration, during the Clinton, impeachment, whatever. They wanted every shred of paper. Then when Blasey Ford came around and all these accusations and allegations started piling up, they looked at his yearbook. The poor guy brought his calendar from high school, 50-something-year-old man to the Senate. Everything was vitally important. And now there's zero curiosity about any of that stuff relating to a sexual assault allegation. So that's the first thing. But secondly, you just mentioned that when they asked him why you're not releasing it, he literally said because they might have conversations with Vladimir Putin in there and you might take them out of context. Imagine if, didn't we just go through 4 years of hysteria over secret conversations with Putin? Releasing his papers gives context to all of that. It doesn't take the context away. It's absurd. His reasoning for not releasing it is completely absurd. The real reason he doesn't want to release it is because we have 50 years of notes and letters that will undermine every position he has right now, which is his experience is his argument for the presidency, and yet he disagrees with everything he ever believed for almost 50 years. So
my thesis, David, on Joe Biden is that he is in a sense the quintessential politician, in that he just, what do I need to say to get reelected or to be in the good graces of my party at the moment? Without any exception, that's where he has been. What has been the most advantageous position for Joe Biden at every step of his political career? I think if you go back and look, that's what it has been.
Absolutely. He pretends that he was only civil with segregationists, but that's not true. He wanted committee assignments. He wanted seats on those committees. He had issues that they shared a belief in, like, busing. And perhaps there's nothing wrong with that, but he should make that argument. But I would ask someone to ask him. I mean, the person with accents, they'll never ask him. But what position has he held throughout his career? One position on policy, not some platitude, that he's held throughout his career. Is there any? He's been wrong about war. I'm just quoting him. He says he was wrong about it. He's been wrong about Iraq. He was wrong. He thinks he was wrong about gay marriage or abortion. He was one of the leading pro-life Democrats in the Senate for years and years and years. And now he has an extremist position on that as well. So, listen, I don't think people really care about flip-flops that much, but it does say something about him as a politician and a person.
Did you see the New York Magazine piece that, I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty close to this. It was, being out of public view and not being heard from, Joe Biden's best weapon is being put aside because of these allegations. They're actually saying that his advantage is to not be heard from and not be seen in public. And that's his best strategy. That was his best strategy. That was the piece said.
I think that's right. I think you see his poll numbers go up whenever he's not there, because he is having a hard time articulating positions. And I think the more you see him, the less you like him. I think that was the case with Hillary as well. People forget her poll numbers looked pretty good as far as likability and stuff before she started running in 2015. They had risen and then they quickly went down. But that might be the case with most people. But the thing with Biden is that he really doesn't stand for anything other than taking down Donald Trump. And that might be good enough. Maybe it is good enough. But
did you see this one on the sexual assault allegations against Biden specifically? Lisa Bloom, who people may know, is a well-known feminist lawyer. She's right. She's one of these people that sues high-profile individuals for sexual harassment, and in her Twitter bio, she even has Bill O'Reilly hates me or something. I mean, she's clearly a left-wing, liberal, legal feminist. And she tweeted out, I don't know if you saw this, David, so I'm just going to give this to you. This is from the weekend. This is from her official. Do you know who Lisa Bloom is? Are you familiar with this lady? A little bit?
Somewhat.
Yeah, a little bit, right.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, the basics about her. She tweeted out, I believe you, Tara Reid. You have people who remember you told them about this decades ago. We know he, meaning Biden, is handsy. You are not asking for money. You've obviously struggled mightily with this. I still have to fight Trump, so I will still support Joe, but I believe you. Oh, okay. Well, there we go. At least someone's saying it, right? At least someone's telling us the truth. Yeah, I mean, Biden, the allegation's totally credible. He's a handsy weirdo. Maybe he sexually assaulted this lady, but I still got to vote for Biden. This is a feminist lawyer activist.
It reminds me of the Clinton years when you had people defending him saying things like, you know, I don't know if I can say this.
Yeah, I know. I would do things for Bill Clinton as a female if he keeps abortion legal. The same idea.
Right. So the bigger truth, the more important, the more important political angle is not the single person, but the cause, right? So I think that's what you're seeing right now. I mean, the double standard is it's amazing and so transparent that I don't know that we can go on longer like this. I mean, next time there's a sexual assault allegation against someone, we're just going to go back and forth showing them how hypocritical they are, but they'll just ignore it, right? And I want to just quickly mention, it's not just the media coverage that's hypocritical or the political sort of positioning on this, but I wrote about this as well. Joe Biden supports a complete stripping due process from colleges, where young men most of the time are.
These are the Title IX investigations, right?
Yeah, alleged cannot have witnesses, cannot question their accuser. It goes on and on. And he supports those restrictions on due process as well. And not a single person who interviews him they could barely ask him about the whole thing as it is, will ask him about that either. And that bothers me, I think, more than any of this, because these are powerless people who don't have the media, who don't have other politicians defending them. In fact, the opposite.
My favorite form of performative liberal journalism is when finally, after weeks of delay, one of their very highly paid and wildly overrated news anchors asks like one or two blaringly obvious questions of Joe Biden, and we're all supposed to sort of sit around like, oh, that's amazing. Look at that.
Do you notice everything gets very complicated and subtle and, thorny when they, when they have to ask one of theirs these questions? It wasn't like that during Kavanaugh. And, I agree with you. I mean, it was like they set him up. He knew the question was coming. And he still didn't really answer in any kind of real, he looked lost. He looked like they had given him a script. As soon as he had to get off the script, he looked like a deer in headlights. I just don't think that his answer is very good. Also, unfortunately, I don't think people care.
I also think it's noteworthy. There are, and I'm gonna call her out here. Kirsten Powers, who I think was she ever kind of she's definitely a Democrat now. I don't know if she was one that switched over, but she made a claim publicly on Twitter, which is where now that the journalists are all locked at home, we just fight on Twitter all day. So for those at home listening, you're like, who cares? This is what all the people that are supposed to be chasing down facts and actually finding stuff out for you doing. They're snarking at their perceived opponents, ideological opponents in the world of media. But she had something about how the standard was essentially, that Joe Biden has addressed the allegations, but Kavanaugh didn't. Not only is that crazy, right? I mean, and I remember I actually argued with Kirsten Powers on Twitter during the Kavanaugh thing, and she was out of her mind. She was wrong then. But Molly Hemingway, who wrote, of course, the book Justice on Trial, an excellent book, I know your former colleague from The Federalist, came out and reminded everybody that the Senate Democrats wanted the Swetnick allegations to be a part of the Senate record against him. The woman who was clearly out of her mind and lying.
And I think Senator Harris mentioned her, and it's in the record. But more than that, she claimed that the standard hadn't changed, that senators were only calling for an FBI investigation. And if they couldn't get that investigation, then he should step down. I then sent her a bunch of links showing that was wrong. That
you and Powers threw down over this. I didn't even see that. Look at this.
So I sent her link after link of Democrats saying he needs to step down with there was no unless this or that. It was just step down because we believe all women, whatever it was. And so she just ignored that. And then she, I think, deleted her old tweets. It's really no way to have a debate about stuff. And I feel like things have changed in a way where there actually used to be, there's always hypocrisy. There's always sort of partisanship, but there used to be some sort of maybe ground rules of a debate that you had, like you had to live by your opinions from the past, that you had to defend what you had said at some point or explain why you didn't believe that anymore. I feel like people don't have any need, don't feel any need to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's just a total food fight. Whatever wins in the moment, whatever gets the most, yes, slay. That's what people want, especially in the world of digital media. Well, David, what are you writing on this week? Anything you can give us a preview of for National Review?
I just wrote a short piece on the Lincoln Project's new ad playing off Reagan's Morning in America, and it's like mourning, like, sadness in America. And it's sort of just a very anti-Reagan ad where it shows American people as a bunch of helpless, self-pitying, servants of the state waiting around for government to save them, which is the antithesis of Reaganism and is not what Reagan stood for at all. Again, I'm not here to glorify a president, but he had a very sunny disposition, and I think he believed in American exceptionalism, which people at the Lincoln Project do not.
Yeah, the Lincoln Project is getting some heat from the Trumpster himself, as they should. A lot of clowns over there. But thank you so much, David Harsanyi from National Review. Great to talk to you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
So, team, last night I was cleaning up my apartment, getting ready for the day, and I was listening to Savage Son by Jack Carr. Look, this audiobook is fantastic. It's engrossing. I'm reading about how at the Central African Republic you have these Russians who are exploiting the country and just getting set up for all kinds of bad stuff, and all the details, all the stuff that's used to make this seem more real come from Jack Carr, who was a Navy SEAL and knows what the heck he's talking about. He understands the intelligence community. I'm ex-CIA, so I know what that actually means. He gets the details right. He gets the feel right. He will bring you right into the action. I'm listening to it. I think you should too. Savage Son. Download it wherever you listen to audiobooks. I go on Audible, on Amazon, but wherever you go, Savage Son. That's the newest Jack Carr book in the Terminal List series. I'm a few chapters in and loving it so far. You will too. It's excellent writing. It'll keep you engrossed. You'll learn. And this is somebody who really understands the subject matter. Savage Son is the book. Download it wherever you listen to audiobooks. And join me, because that's what I'm doing. Just got to say that as we think about the way that the media has treated the allegations against Biden and how many of us who were very vocal, as I was at the time, about the treatment of Kavanaugh and how horrendous the whole thing was, I've got to say the media has even exceeded. I knew they'd be dirty and terrible on this, but it's as though their only options are to admit that they were that they're engaged in a horrific double standard for nothing but political reasons, or to just take their credibility and run it through a buzzsaw a few times, and they're just they're just running it through that buzzsaw. They do not care. I don't know if that really sounded like a buzzsaw, but it was kind of it's just like a high pitched noise. Anyway, they're even exceeding my expectations for awfulness is all I'm saying. And and the fact that Biden is their candidate, that exceeds my expectations for how awful and how ridiculous they are. I mean, this is flatly absurd. I sit here thinking to myself, this is who they offer up. I mean, we all recognize that this guy's a joke, right? This is absurd. He was a joke when he was Obama's VP. The fact that Delaware has let this guy be a senator as long as he had is just astonishing. And now we're going to make him president of the United States? I don't think so. But then again, the Democrats thought maybe we should make the guy who, was, the open socialist, soon to be in his ninth decade of life, Bernie Sanders, make him the president. I mean, the Democrats they're nuts, folks. They're just nuts.
Right now, just the stakes are too high when it comes to another 4 years of Trump. My community especially has been so impacted. And it's, for a lot of communities, this is an issue of life and death. We've had kids in cages. We've had a pandemic response that happened way too late. That has cost us lives. We have people that don't have access to critical care that they need. I think it's really important that we rally behind our Democratic nominee in November.
What would Joe Biden have done differently? I mean, let's really just take a moment for this, right? If Joe Biden had been president, what would have gone differently here? He wouldn't have shut down flights from China. We know that because the Democrats were all opposed to that. The media was opposed to that. And even public health experts weren't sure. What was going to be the big difference, the big change in his approach? And I mean this. Can you even think of what it would be? I don't know. He was going to mandate a federal lockdown across the board. He doesn't have the... We've already gone through this. The states are the ones that are using police powers, or more specifically, quarantine powers under their police powers to institute a lot of the lockdown policies. The federal government can shut the borders down, but the Democrats are open borders. Democrats don't want to shut borders down. They want them to be as wide open as possible. So what was Biden going to do that was different, and why would we have the expectation that he'd be better at this? Let's take a step back for a moment. We had President Obama in office for 8 years. Was Obama good as a steward of the economy? I mean, were Obama administration policies good for growth, good for small business, and helpful coming out of a recession, right? And the problem with gauging the Obama administration on the economy was it was always they picked the worst month of job losses, and it was a cyclical financial recession. But they took the worst month of job losses, and then anything was better than that. So they said, well, that's what we were at, and now here's where we are. Well, yeah, but you had 8 years. And how did it really feel? What was GDP looking like? And compare it to other administrations, not just right before, but stretching back for many decades. Democrat policies, raising taxes, regulating the crap out of all businesses, and completely engaging in excessive and enhanced central planning all the time is not a recipe for productivity, for wealth, for growth, for prosperity. We ran this experiment with the Obama administration, but now we're told, if Biden had been in charge, things would be better. Remember that without this horrible disease ripping through the globe, the Trump administration, I mean, they kept lying. The Democrats were lying about how the economy wasn't that good. The economy was phenomenal. Now we all look at this and say, of course it was. I was telling you it was all along. Those of you who have been longtime listeners to this show know that I kept saying, guys, life is really good right now. Enjoy it. Life. And that's not, there are other shows that are like, yeah, it's terrible. The country's falling apart, and there's all this stuff. And it's the same thing every day. And, the bad people. And they're yelling. And I was telling you the truth, which was that the economy is actually in a better place. The economy is really so strong, and things are going so well that we should have enjoyed those moments as a nation. And the first 3 years of the Trump presidency were a beautiful thing. Now we're in a different place because of the virus. Back to AOC. What exactly is AOC's contention here about the late start to the pandemic response? Did Europe do a better job? No, Europe did not do a better job. What country are we supposed to look at that got ahead of this, but did the same things that we did? Because remember, she's complaining about the timing. Now, AOC is a moron, but she's a very influential moron, so we have to deal with her, right? We have to understand what her contentions are, and her ignorance can't just be brushed aside, because her ignorance, unfortunately, is very influential in the minds of even more ignorant people on the left, who view her as really a symbolic figure in many ways. Right? She's young, she's Latina, she's super left wing, she's a socialist. That's all that they care about, and that's it. She's good on TV and has a strong social media game and everything else. The substance of her positions and what she says does not really matter. But I would just note that they never, speaking of substance, they never tell you what would be different if we had had a Biden administration dealing with all of this. They have no real answer for you. And you sit and you say, well, hold on a moment. why should we think that Biden would do a better? Oh, because he's not Trump. And that's really all it comes down to, which you could say about a lot of people. There are a lot of people around the world who are not Donald Trump. But this is intellectual dishonesty. And you're seeing this particularly from progressives right now, that this is an opportunity for them. Yes, they want to rally behind Biden, but it's because they view him as just the vessel for the progressive agenda. All you need are Democrats. But the Democratic Party has moved so far left that all you need is a Democrat in charge. All you need is a Democrat in charge, and they'll be able to get a lot of things they want, and they'll have the judges they want who are left-wing activists pretending to interpret the law, and all these other things. So it doesn't. All it has to be is Team Democrat has to win. That's all that they care about. And in the more immediate term, the policies they're pushing for show you what they really think this country needs, which is a whole lot more socialism and central planning. Ayanna Pressley, for example, is out there advocating for the cancellation of rent. Play clip 6.
Renters are in trouble. Renters are suffering. Talk about the ideas that you have for trying to alleviate that.
Sure. Well, first, I just want to commend my colleague, Representative Omar, for her legislation, which I'm proud to be an original co-sponsor of, which would cancel rent. We're in the midst of a pandemic, a public health crisis. People are quite literally navigating a new normal, just trying to stay alive. And your housing is your most expensive bill. And also to the points made by Secretary Castro and also the professor, housing is a critical determinant of health as well. So many of the health disparities that we see. It's also why we need quality, safe, and affordable housing. But housing is your most expensive bill. And so while folks are navigating a new normal, just trying to stay alive, they shouldn't also be worried about paying the rent. And so we should just cancel that and eliminate that worry.
Cancel rent. Okay. I can understand why they're saying this and put aside what the long-term plan is here, because we are now closer than we've ever thought would be possible to. I've talked to you about the turnkey authoritarian state we're in now, which I wanted to return to that thought, but also universal basic income and the government as the real engine of the economy instead of the other way around. The government is supposed to print currency and to regulate, lawful financial and commercial activity. But this is being flipped around. Now the government is the economy. The government says this has value, so it is value. And you say, well, hold on, that's only true of currency because of the underlying economic reality, right? Just look at Zimbabwe. Can Zimbabwe say, well, we think that our dollars, which their currencies completely evaporated and collapsed into nothing. But, 15 years ago, could they have said when they were going through hyperinflation, we think our currency is worth X amount of gold bars and just said that? No. That would not have worked. Right? The U.S. economy is valuable because of our resources, intellectual property, and the actions of the free market that have rewarded all of the value creation within the economy. That's why our dollar is worth what it is. It's not worth that because the government just happens to be like really awesome and says this is what it's worth. Otherwise, every government would do that. There's a lack of connection in the minds of the people that are advocating for this between there being any underlying value premise for a dollar for money and what they see as government policy, which is effectively we are going toward modern monetary theory, whether we like it or not. That's where we're heading. This is the opportunity. Cancel rent. Okay, well, the only way you can do that without because what happens when you cancel rent? Landowners and those who own these homes, those who hold the mortgage, that have to pay the mortgage so that they can then pay the bank, right? So the bank can continue to lend. And, there's this whole cycle. Well, if you shut down one, you got to shut down all of it. And that will cause a freeze in credit. And once credit freezes, businesses can't operate. And once businesses can't operate, there's no more milk in the stores, meat in the freezer. That's where we head. That's what ends up happening. They don't understand this, but that's true. So then what do you have to do? You have to print money. And by printing, I mean you have to just have the creation of money as we have a fiat currency, but the additional creation of currency. And people have been warning about this. Dr. Ron Paul and others have been warning about this for a long time. Now we're really seeing where this experiment goes. We're going to be at $30 trillion debt by the end of the year. Cancel rent just means have the government pay everyone's rent. Well, if the government can pay everyone's rent for a couple of months, why can't it do it for the next 6 months? And why can't the government look at people who are poor and say, we don't want you to be poor anymore. Here's an anti-poverty payment lump sum. We'll give you 20 grand. We'll give you 50 grand. Well, the money, they're just creating the money. What's the problem? We're always told that there's no inflation. The problem with inflation is when you have it, it's too late. And when it gets bad, controlling it is very difficult. But modern monetary theory is what AOC, Bernie Sanders, the socialist left, which views the government as the authority in all things that creates all things. Right? The government allows us to maintain certain property. The government allows us to keep some of what we make and allows businesses to operate everything else. It's not that we have allowed the government to do certain things on our behalf, right? They've flipped this relationship. They just want the government to print money to pay for everything. That's what MMT is. Is there a need for this thing? The government will pay for it. Doesn't matter what it is. Doesn't matter what the price tag is. We are going closer to that than we ever thought possible. And I'm not hearing, where are all the conservatives who are sounding the alarm bell on this? And this is also why we got to go back to work. We have to have creation of wealth and value if we're going to keep spending dollars. This is very straightforward. Nobody wants to hear that right now. Man, we are in a pandemic from COVID-19. We are also in a pandemic of panic.
I want Donald Trump to look one of these essential workers in the eye, the meat packers, delivery drivers, healthcare workers, grocery store clerks, and tell them they don't deserve a livable wage, paid sick leave. This is all about, as my dad would say, you see, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about being treated with respect. The recognition that these people put their health and lives at risk so the rest of us could be safe and fed has to be made clear.
What's a livable wage, Joe Biden? What's a livable wage? What is he? This is where we perhaps get to the discussion about the increase in minimum wage, which is popular, even though every economist who looks at it and crunches the numbers on it. Remember, economists are not good at predictions, but they can look at what has happened and usually tell you what the numbers were, and maybe we can draw some conclusions from that. But he's doing the usual here from Democrats. What should be a livable wage? I mean, do I think that we should be supportive and thankful of those who are continuing to work or in essential jobs? Yeah, of course. And is there an incentive for employers to pay them well so they continue to show up for jobs that are, yes, there is that incentive. But I want to know, is it Joe Biden's prerogative to determine what they should be paid? Just want to double it? Why not triple everybody's wages? Once you play this game and it's no longer what the market will bear, it's what Joe Biden says it will bear, there's no end. And this is why this movement away from an objective, fact-based reality in all respects in this country toward just let the experts, let the really smart people tell you what you can do in every aspect of your life and your business, who you can see, where you can go. Now we have to have mandatory face coverings, all of this stuff. I thought we were a country where there'd be more of an objection to the eradication of our liberties. I thought we would be a little bit tougher to roll over than this. And I'm really concerned. What makes you think that this won't be expanded? This mentality of not just what people should be paid and where they should go and who they can see. Why won't this be used for other issues? A governor can just claim, there were some of us who would say, oh, when you have a Democrat administration now, they'll claim that president, whether it's a President Biden or whomever else comes after him, they can claim that we're in an extreme situation. They'll claim a national emergency on a gun control issue, for example, and just start seizing guns. Do you think the people right now that are saying cancel rent, trillions of dollars need to get spent on not just paying the workers who have had their jobs taken away from them. That's one thing. I'm doing trillions of dollars on whatever the wish list is for Democrats. Just start spending money. Pay down the bloated pension programs of Democrat states for public sector officials. All these different things. I mean, the piggy bank has been broken open, and we're all supposed to say, great, let them do whatever they want. And all of this is happening, and we should have less faith than ever in experts to rule over us, us proles, as us peasants, wisely and justly and fairly, and instead we're getting pushed more and more in the other direction. And I'm just sitting here trying to warn about what's going to happen. Think of the rhetoric used on climate change, which I know for some of you, your eyes roll back in your head. Oh my God, climate change. It's so, No, they've already told us that this is a template. In fact, if we want to defeat climate change, you know what we have to do? Exactly what our economy is doing right now, which is a whole lot of nothing except suffer and don't do anything. But that will save the planet. And there are people who believe this, powerful people. There are international interests. There are media conglomerates. There are billionaires who are devoted to this idea that the only way we can save the planet, the only way we can really prevent the warming, they claim, is to bring CO2 levels down to where they are now, as we are shutting down our economy because of COVID-19. You don't think they're going to try for something like this again? Or that they will at least use this as the template for further statewide power grabs? Just declare a climate emergency. No one's allowed to do this. No one's allowed to do that. Sorry, there's a climate emergency. This is a deep-seated mentality. I mean, this need to control others that progressives have. In many ways, it is the defining separation between their psychology and that of conservatives. They want to tell other people what to do. They need to tell other people what to do. And we're going along with this much more than we should.